Muhammad Ali sat in his Los Angeles office, staring at Bruce Lee, and said nothing. Not a word, not a joke, not a boast, just silence. For 10 minutes. Anyone who knew Ali knew this was impossible. The man never stopped talking. He predicted knockouts. He recited poetry. He trash-talked opponents until they couldn't think straight. His mouth was as famous as his fists. Ali didn't do silence. But Bruce Lee had just shown him something that shook everything Ali thought he knew about fighting. And for the first time in his life, the heavyweight champion of the world had no words. Before we continue with the story, you can support us by subscribing to the channel and liking the video. Don't forget to write in the comments where you're watching from and how old you are. Let's continue. This was March 1973. Ali was 31 years old, recently reclaimed champion after his exile at the peak of his powers. He'd beaten everyone, destroyed legends, made impossible comebacks. He was, by any measure, the greatest fighter alive. But the small man sitting across from him, 5 feet 7 inches, 135 pounds, a movie star whom most people thought just did choreographed fights on screen, had just explained exactly how he'd kill Muhammad Ali in a real fight. Not metaphorically, not theoretically, actually explained, demonstrated, and proved it. And Ali couldn't argue, couldn't joke, couldn't dismiss it, because in those 10 minutes of silence, he was processing a truth that would change how he understood combat forever. But to understand that silence, you need to know how these two legends ended up in the same room. You need to know what happened before the demonstration. You need to know why Bruce Lee walked into Muhammad Ali's office that afternoon with a question that would expose the greatest boxer's greatest weakness. Ali's secretary knocked on his office door. "Mr. Ali? There's a Mr. Lee here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but he says it's important." "Lee." Ali was reviewing contract papers for an upcoming fight. "Don't know any Lee. Tell him to make an appointment. He says you met briefly at a party last month." Bruce Lee. Ali looked up. He remembered some Hollywood party his manager had dragged him to. Lots of actors and producers wanting photos with the champ. And yeah, there'd been this Chinese guy, smaller than most of the women there, who'd been surprisingly intense when they shook hands. "Movie star," someone said. "Martial arts films." "The movie guy?" Ali grinned. "Sure, send him in. This should be entertaining." Bruce Lee walked in wearing simple black pants and a black shirt. No entourage, no cameras, no Hollywood glamour. Just a man with the kind of focused energy that made the room feel smaller. "Mr. Ali," Lee said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing me." Ali shook it, noting the grip, stronger than it should be for someone that size. "Bruce Lee, right? I heard you do kung fu movies. My kids love that stuff. You do your own stunts." "I do." Lee didn't sit down, didn't relax. "Mr. Ali, I came here to ask you a question, and I need you to take it seriously." Ali leaned back in his chair, amused. "Okay, shoot. Could you beat me in a real fight?" The office went quiet. Ali's smile faded slightly. "What? A real fight? Not a boxing match. Not a movie. A real fight with no rules. Could you beat me?" Ali laughed, that big, theatrical laugh. "Brother, I'm the heavyweight champion of the world. I weigh 210 pounds. You weigh what, 130? 135? Come on now. That's not what I asked." Lee's voice was calm, patient. "I asked if you could beat me in a real fight. Without boxing rules. Without a referee. Without gloves. Without rounds. Just you and me, fighting until one of us can't continue. Could you beat me?" Ali's smile turned into a grin. "Man, are you serious right now? You're a movie star. I'm a professional fighter. I've fought the toughest men in the world." "In a boxing ring," Lee interrupted, "with boxing rules. Padded gloves. A referee to stop the fight. 3-minute rounds with rest breaks. Rules that protect you." "Protect me?" Ali sat up straighter. "Nobody needs to protect Muhammad Ali. The rules protect you," Lee repeated. "Not from your opponents. From reality. From what fighting actually is when there are no rules." The room temperature seemed to drop. Ali's manager, who'd been sitting quietly in the corner, stood up. "Mr. Lee, I think." "Sit down," Ali said, not taking his eyes off Lee. "I want to hear this. Bruce, you came all the way here to tell me that you, a movie star, could beat me, the heavyweight champion, in a fight." "No." Lee shook his head. I came here to show you why boxing, as great as it is, only works within its rules. And to show you what happens when those rules disappear. Show me. Ali stood up, his full height imposing. You want to fight me right here? No. I want to demonstrate. May I? Something in Lee's tone, not challenging, not aggressive, just absolutely certain, made Ali curious. Demonstrate what? How I'd beat you. Lee gestured to the open space in the office. Please come here. Stand like you would in a fight. Ali glanced at his manager, who shrugged. This was crazy, but also kind of interesting. All right, Bruce Lee. Show me your movie magic. Ali moved to the open space and took his boxing stance. Hands up, chin down, weight on his toes. The stance that had beaten Sonny Liston, that had survived George Foreman's power, that had frustrated Joe Frazier. The greatest stance in boxing. Bruce Lee looked at it and said 4 words that would haunt Ali. That's your first mistake. Your hands are up here, Lee said, gesturing to Ali's gloves protecting his face. Guarding against punches. That works in boxing because your opponent can only punch. But what if I don't punch? Before Ali could answer, Lee dropped to a crouch and swept his leg in an arc that would have taken Ali's front leg completely out. He stopped the sweep inches from Ali's ankle, but the intent was clear. Your legs are unprotected, Lee said. In boxing, no one attacks them. But in a real fight, I break your knee. You drop. Fight's over. Ali looked down at his stance. Okay, so I'd adjust. You adjust, I adjust faster. Lee moved behind Ali, not slowly, but with a speed that made Ali's boxing reflexes seem sluggish. You turn to face me, I'm already at your back. In boxing, you can't attack from behind. But in a real fight, Lee's hands moved, not touching but demonstrating, to points on Ali's spine, his kidneys, the back of his neck. Pressure points. Nerve clusters. Attack here, your arms stop working. Here, your breathing stops. Here, you lose consciousness. Ali turned to face Lee, and his expression had changed. The amusement was gone. Those are illegal shots. There's no illegal in a real fight, Lee said. That's my point. You've trained your whole life for a sport. A beautiful sport. A noble sport. But a sport with rules. Rules that say no low blows, no shots to the back of the head, no attacking the legs, no grappling, no. I can grapple. Ali interrupted. I've clinched plenty of times. Show me. Ali moved forward and wrapped his arms around Lee in a classic boxing clinch, the kind that would hold an opponent until the referee separated them. Lee didn't resist. He simply dropped his weight, shifted his hips, and suddenly Ali was off balance, tipping forward, and Lee's hand was positioned at Ali's throat. If this were real, Lee said quietly, I'd crush your larynx right now. You'd suffocate in about 90 seconds. He released the position and stepped back. Ali straightened up, and something flickered across his face. Not fear, but recognition. The recognition that this small man wasn't showing off. He was teaching. Come at me like you would in a fight, Lee said. Throw your best punch. Ali hesitated. I don't want to hurt. You won't hit me. That stung Ali's pride. Brother, I'm the fastest heavyweight in history. Throw the punch. Ali threw a jab. Not full power, but fast. Olympic-level fast. The jab that had frustrated every opponent he'd ever faced. Lee wasn't there. He'd moved inside the punch, under Ali's extended arm, and his hand was pressed against Ali's ribs. Liver shot. You'd be on the ground vomiting. Ali threw a combination. Jab, jab. Right hand. Lee moved like water, flowing around the punches, and suddenly his leg was wrapped around Ali's, his hands positioned for a throw. You go down, I follow, you never get up. They separated. Ali was breathing harder now, not from exertion, but from the growing realization of what he was seeing. In a boxing match, Lee said, You destroy me. I can't match your power, your reach, your conditioning for 12 rounds. But a boxing match has rules that protect both of us. No shots to the back of the head. No attacking the legs. No grappling on the ground. A referee to separate us. 3-minute rounds with rest breaks. In that structure, with those rules, you're the greatest. He paused. But if we fought right here, right now, with no rules? If this were a dark alley or a street fight or a life or death situation, I'd attack everything boxing protects. your legs, your back, your pressure points. I'd grapple you to the ground where your punching power means nothing. And I'd end the fight in under a minute. Ali stood there, hands still up in boxing position. And for the first time in his life, he had no comeback. No joke, no boast. Because everything Bruce Lee said was true. And in that moment, Muhammad Ali, who always had words, went silent. Bruce Lee waited. Ali's manager waited. The office clock ticked. And Muhammad Ali said nothing. His mind was racing. Every fight he'd ever studied. Every opponent he'd analyzed. Every technique he'd mastered. All of it built on the foundation of boxing. A sport with rules, regulations, boundaries. A sport that said certain attacks were illegal, certain targets off-limits, certain techniques prohibited. And now this movie star, this small, intense man, had just shown him that all those rules weren't protecting his opponents. They were protecting him. Ali thought about the stance he'd perfected. Hand high to guard against punches. Chin tucked to avoid hooks. Weight on his toes for mobility. But all of it assumed his opponent was also boxing, also following rules, also restricted to punching above the belt with padded gloves. What if they weren't? What if his opponent, like Lee, went for his knees? His eyes? His throat? What if they grappled him to the ground where his 210 pounds of muscle couldn't generate the leverage for his legendary punches? What if they attacked him from behind, from the side, from angles that boxing never prepared him for? Lee watched Ali process all this. Watched the champion's face cycle through emotions, surprise, denial, resistance, and finally, reluctant acceptance. Lee had seen this before. He'd shown these truths to many fighters, boxers and karate experts and judo practitioners. Everyone who'd trained in a single style, a single sport, a single set of rules. They all went through the same process. The realization that mastery within rules isn't the same as mastery without them. Finally, after 10 minutes that felt like an hour, Ali spoke. You're right. 2 words. No jokes. No qualifications. Just truth. Lee nodded. Most people don't want to hear it. They've invested too much in their style, their sport, their identity as a practitioner of one thing. But you're different. You're smart enough to understand. Ali sat down heavily in his chair. All these years, all these fights, I thought, he stopped, shook his head. I thought I was learning how to fight, but I was just learning how to box. Boxing is magnificent, Lee said. It's one of the most refined, effective striking arts in the world. Your footwork, your timing, your understanding of distance and angles, that's genius level. But it's genius within constraints. Constraints that protect me, Ali said quietly. From certain things, yes. From being kicked in the knee. From being grabbed and thrown. From attacks that boxing rules forbid. But those rules exist in the ring, Muhammad. Not in reality. Ali looked up at Lee. So what do? Learn everything? Every martial art? Every fighting style? No. Lee sat down across from Ali. You learn principles. You understand that fighting isn't about styles or sports. It's about adapting to reality. About using what works in the situation you're in. About abandoning what doesn't work. He leaned forward. In a boxing match, you'd beat me. I know that. In an MMA fight with some rules, maybe we'd be more even. In a street fight with no rules, I'd beat you. I know that too. But here's the truth. Knowing that makes both of us better fighters. How? Ali asked. Because now you understand your sport's limitations. You can still be the greatest boxer who ever lived. But you won't be arrogant about it. You won't think that boxing is the answer to everything. You'll respect other forms of combat. You'll understand that mastery in one area doesn't mean mastery of all areas. For the next hour, Ali and Lee talked. Not about fighting techniques or combat strategies, but about philosophy. About the nature of mastery. About the difference between being good at a sport and being prepared for reality. Lee explained his concept. He called it Jeet Kune Do, about absorbing what's useful, rejecting what's useless, about not being bound by style or tradition, about being like water, formless, adapting to whatever container held it. Ali listened, really listened, not planning his next comment or joke, but absorbing ideas that challenged everything he thought he knew. You know what scares people? Lee said at one point, not losing a fight. but discovering that their years of training might not mean what they thought it meant. That they might have mastered a game, not combat. That's what I showed you today. And you think I can handle that? Ali asked. I know you can. You're Muhammad Ali. You've already done the hardest thing. You've questioned your own assumptions. Most men can't do that, especially not champions. As Lee stood to leave, Ali said, Can I ask you something? Of course. If we really did fight, no cameras, no witnesses, just you and me, would you really try to kill me? Go for my throat, my eyes, all that. Lee was quiet for a moment. In a real fight, a fight for survival, I'd do whatever I had to do. Yes. He paused. But so would you. That's what I was trying to show you. That you have the capacity for that kind of fighting. You just haven't trained it because boxing, beautiful, noble boxing, doesn't allow it. Should I train it? Ali asked. That's up to you. But I'll tell you this. Understanding what you can't do makes you better at what you can do. Knowing my grappling can beat your striking makes you appreciate your striking more. And it makes you humble. Lee smiled. And humility, Muhammad, is what separates good fighters from great ones. They shook hands. Lee left, and Ali sat in his office for another hour, thinking about everything he'd learned. His manager finally spoke up. That was intense. Ali nodded. That little man just changed how I think about fighting. You think he was right? That he could beat you? In a boxing match? No chance. But in a fight with no rules. Ali paused. Yeah, I think he could. And you know what? I respect the hell out of him for being able to show me that without making me feel small. That takes a different kind of strength. Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee stayed in touch after that day. Not close friends, but respectful colleagues who understood each other. Lee sent Ali books on philosophy. Ali invited Lee to training camps. They talked occasionally about combat, about mastery, about the nature of being the best at something. In July 1973, just 4 months after their meeting, Bruce Lee died. He was 32 years old. A cerebral edema, sudden and unexpected. The martial arts world went into shock. The movie industry mourned. And Muhammad Ali, when he heard the news, sat in silence. That silence again, the one Lee had taught him about. The silence of really processing something profound. Ali attended Lee's funeral in Seattle. He didn't speak to reporters, didn't make grand statements, just paid his respects to a man who'd taught him something crucial about himself. Years later, after Ali had retired from boxing, after he'd become a global icon, after Parkinson's had started affecting his speech, he was asked about Bruce Lee in an interview. That man, Ali said, his voice already showing the effects of the disease, was special, not because of his movies or his martial arts, but because he had the courage to tell me a truth I didn't want to hear, and the skill to prove it without humiliating me. The interviewer asked what truth that was. That being the best at something doesn't mean you understand everything. That mastery in one area can blind you to your weaknesses. That rules protect you as much as they define you. Ali paused. Bruce Lee showed me I was a great boxer, but he also showed me I was just a boxer. And there's a big difference between those two things. Did that change how you fought? It changed how I thought about fighting. Made me more humble. Made me respect other fighting styles. Made me understand that my greatness existed within boundaries. And that's okay. You could be the greatest within rules and still acknowledge that without rules, everything's different. He smiled, that famous Ali smile, even with Parkinson's making it difficult. And you know what's crazy? 20 years after Bruce died, they invented something called UFC, mixed martial arts, no rules fighting. And everything Bruce showed me that day, it all came true. Boxers got destroyed by grapplers. Strikers got destroyed by submission fighters. And everyone had to learn what Bruce already knew. Fighting isn't about style. It's about adapting to reality. The story of Muhammad Ali and Bruce Lee's meeting became legendary in martial arts circles. Different versions emerged. Some claimed they actually fought. Others said it was just a conversation. But the people who knew both men understood what really happened. Bruce Lee showed Muhammad Ali the limits of boxing, not to diminish Ali's greatness, but to expand his understanding, to prove that mastery within rules is different from mastery of combat itself. And Ali, Arrogant, boastful, never back down Ali had the wisdom and humility to recognize the truth in what Lee showed him. That 10 minutes of silence was Ali processing a fundamental shift in how he understood his own expertise. In 1993, 20 years after Lee's death, the UFC held its first tournament. Fighters from different disciplines, boxing, karate, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, competed with minimal rules. And exactly what Bruce Lee had predicted happened. Boxers, with no defense against takedowns or submissions, lost to grapplers. Strikers who couldn't check leg kicks got destroyed. Single-style fighters got dominated by mixed martial artists who'd trained in multiple disciplines. Muhammad Ali watched those early UFC fights. He saw boxers, men with professional records, men who'd won titles, get taken down and submitted in minutes. And he thought about Bruce Lee, about that afternoon in 1973, about the demonstration that had made him go silent. In one of his final interviews, in 2015, just a year before his death, Ali was asked if he had any regrets about his boxing career. Only one. Ali said, his voice barely a whisper, Parkinson's having stolen most of his words. I wish I'd had more time with Bruce Lee. Wish I trained with him, learned from him, understood what he was trying to teach me earlier in my career. What was he trying to teach you? Ali took a long time to answer. When he did, his words were measured, careful, profound. That being the greatest at one thing doesn't make you the greatest at everything. That pride can limit you. That real wisdom is knowing the boundaries of your knowledge. He paused, struggling with the words. Bruce Lee was smaller than me, weaker than me in terms of size, but he was stronger where it mattered, in understanding combat. And he had the courage to show me that, to make the heavyweight champion of the world go silent. That takes more than fighting skill. That takes wisdom. Today, the story of Ali and Lee's meeting is told in martial arts schools around the world. It's used to teach students about humility, about cross-training, about respecting other disciplines. It's used to explain why modern MMA fighters train in boxing and wrestling and jiu-jitsu and Muay Thai, because Lee's prediction came true. Single-style fighters don't dominate anymore. Adaptable fighters do. But the deepest lesson isn't about fighting styles or combat effectiveness. It's about what happened in Muhammad Ali's mind during those 10 minutes of silence. He could have dismissed Bruce Lee, could have laughed it off as movie star nonsense, could have refused to acknowledge that this smaller man might have insights he lacked. But he didn't. He listened. He learned. He grew. That's what separated Ali from other champions. Not just his speed or power or charisma, but his willingness to be wrong. His capacity to recognize truth even when it challenged his ego. His humility in the face of knowledge. Bruce Lee died too young, only 32. The world lost a martial arts genius, a philosopher, an innovator. But his brief friendship with Muhammad Ali created something lasting. It showed that even the greatest champion in the world could learn from someone smaller, younger, less famous. Could sit in silence and really think about truths he'd never confronted. In that silence, Muhammad Ali's 10 minutes of no jokes, no boasts, no words, that might have been the most powerful moment of his life outside the ring. Because it was the moment he stopped being just a boxer and started being a student of combat. The moment he recognized that greatness has boundaries, and wisdom is knowing where those boundaries are. Muhammad Ali was the greatest boxer who ever lived. But that afternoon in 1973, Bruce Lee showed him something more important than being the greatest. He showed him how to be humble, how to learn, how to recognize that mastery is a journey, not a destination. And for 10 minutes, the man who never stopped talking had nothing to say. Because sometimes silence is the only appropriate response to profound truth. That's what Bruce Lee gave Muhammad Ali. Not a fight, but a lesson. Not competition, but wisdom. Not defeat, but growth. And that's what makes this story matter 50 years later. Not because two legends met, but because one legend taught another that being the best at something means knowing its limits. And the other legend was wise enough to listen.